And thank you for returning with the Talk Shop in Studio 255. I'm Eric Henderson. This program, live from Studio 255 in the Laramie Plains Civic Center, brought to you in part by Perkins Restaurant and Bakery, the Hilton Garden Inn, and the Benton Rusty, along with Chano's Village and I-80 Towing and Automotive Services of Laramie, Elk Mountain, and Cheyenne. And we've got Brent Bien, candidate for Wyoming governor, making Wyoming #1. You talk about restoring trust in Wyoming government. Brent, thank you for joining us this morning. This is our third of 3 segments with you today. You've got a full schedule ahead. You've got 11 to 1 today. You'll be at Bernie's restaurant in West Laramie, and the address for that, for folks that might want to join you there, 367 Snowy Range Road. That's people first stop, 11 to 1 at Bernie's Mexican Restaurant. And then in the afternoon, you'll find yourself at WyoTech, Wyoming Technical Institute, a stronghold for vocation education training in Laramie, Wyoming. Born here decades ago. Hey, and then 5 p.m., you will be at the American Legion Auxiliary, that 417 Ivanson Avenue address, for folks 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. if they would like to catch up with you and learn about you. How does somebody research Brent Bien and know what you stand for, your ideas for Wyoming, if they're not able to continue listening here and they want to make a quick check of your campaign and your ideas and your vision for our great state, where do they go?
They can come to brentbien.com. That's a good website. We've got the calendar on there. We've got my platform. My resume's on there if people are interested. And, of course, they can always call 307-763-3442 and email. So if they've got something, some niche issue, whatever it is, I'm more than willing to talk through it.
I always say that tomorrow starts today.
That's right.
And in our earlier segments, you said something that one in our audience texted into the studio and asked more about. You talk about a gross over-collection of monies in the state of Wyoming.
Yeah.
Talk more about that for this listener, if you would.
Well, what we've seen since FY19, really, and that's been since Governor Gordon's been in there, is we've had an over-collection of roughly $9 billion. And we got to remember that this is all taxpayer revenue, and that's a lot of money. So it's as we look at a $34 billion, everybody calls it the rainy day account, the savings account, whatever you want to call it, and it is a lot of that resides.
It's a contingency fund for some government entities. They call,
right.
I know in Albany County, I've heard elected officials talk about wanting a 6-month reserve so that if something happens, they have operational funds to carry over to spell a period of time. But we're well beyond 6 months in accrual.
We are, and we got to remember too, like we talked earlier, is that's not. I mean, if all hell breaks loose, then that's not going to put food on anybody's table. It's not going to put any gas in their truck. It's not going to do any of those kind of things. That is only to sustain government. That's it. So it's and again, I'm all about savings. I'm all about the contingencies. But it is one of those things that we really got to take a hard look at and see what's the requirement for this.
Another topic we touched on, the resources of our great state and topics of budget consideration in the Wyoming legislature. You talk about taxation and elections. Those two key areas are two you're watching with earnest in this 2026 legislative session. Talk more about that quickly.
Yeah, I am. And, there's quite a few bills that are tax relief related and also for our elections. that are up there. There's two ways to go with elections. There's voter integrity. There's election integrity. I'm really pushing on the election integrity route. My biggest concern with voter integrity, and again, our Constitution already says that you have to be a U.S. citizen to vote. And right now, the issue is the proof of it all, if you are actually a citizen or not. But the one thing I will not allow in this state is digital ID. I just won't do it. And if we don't watch it with, voter integrity, is we got to make sure we don't go down that road of digital ID for everybody. I won't allow that. Very similarly fiscally with central-based digital currency, because all of your transactions are monitored. It can be adjusted based on ESG scoring, those kind of things. We won't allow that to happen.
So what happens when a voter goes to the poll and they're in the voting booth and they hit enter on their ballot? It takes them, and they insert it into the counting machine or what have you, and you see the numerical indicator +1. Your vote has been registered. What's going on after that point in time where you've selected as a voter your selections, who you want in office to represent you? What's happening that concerns you about electronic voting?
We don't know what happens because we haven't been able to get there yet. When I say that, there's a process to get to that point. In our statutes, Title 22, and all the clerks know this, is that there's a significant testing requirement that has to happen before the elections ever happen with our ES&S voting system. And there's serialization, there's all these kind of things, what type of ballots they're going to use, or what and how many, or those kind of things. But what we saw in 2024 is that before the primary, not a single county tested their machines correctly. And before the general, we saw that arguably one county, and it's Albany County, tested them incorrectly. Then we got 2022 data, and we saw the same thing. None of the machines were tested correctly. And we went back all the way back as far as we could go. So we even got some stuff that was still left over from 2020. Now, the counties are supposed to keep these on file for 22 months and since the last election. So we got everything we could get. Now, we didn't get this until last May.
When you say we, who's we?
Okay, we is
this the voter initiative?
It is. It's BCR
Tell people
voter
about
initiative.
that who might just be joining us.
Sure. So we created this PAC. BCR Voter Initiative is also referred to as Wyoming Voter Initiatives on Facebook.
What's BCR stand for?
BCR is rocket science for Brent, Cheryl, and Rich, and that's of course me. And it's
three-party we.
That's
all right.
Cheryl Aguirre up in Thermopolis, and then Rich Weber up in Story. So we put this PAC together, and we focus primarily on taxes and elections. So we partnered up with Cause of America with the elections, and we were able to get all this information, all this data. We actually brought in folks, forensic experts who were the nationwide experts on elections. We brought them in. They did it all pro bono. It was amazing. And one of these fellows, a guy by the name of Rick Weibel, he's the only one who's ever been given authorization to hack into ES&S and or Dominion. Now, both of those machines account for 80%.
Test our system. This Weibel has been
yeah, and he actually did it. I believe it was in front of the Pennsylvania legislature. He's been all over the nation telling everybody about these things and how susceptible they are. So he was given authority, and then within 7 minutes he broke into the system. So we know that the motherboards are made in China, okay, of ES&S. And we know that, but we're starting to find out more. I think we had, according to Tulsi Gabbard, she's our DNI, that there's other countries in play in our elections. We're not sure how much.
We should at least be cautious about the possibility of that, right?
We should, and so we don't know. We don't know what actually happens when you hit it. We don't know. We don't know, and it's one thing for every vote to count, but it's something completely different for every vote to count for the intended recipient, and that's what we're trying to make sure actually happens. So we don't know.
I want to move to resources in the state of Wyoming.
Okay.
Wyoming, powerful in mining and resource. Our severance taxes fund so much in the state of Wyoming. But what about agriculture as a cornerstone of Wyoming interests?
Well, I tell you, if anybody looks at our state seal, okay, those four things on there, we've got oil, we've got mining, we've got livestock, and we have grain. And, we've strayed from those. None of those are legacy. None of them. They're just as much a part of the future as they are the past. I mean, that's our backbone. So when I look at agriculture, and, since 2020, we've lost 20,000 farms and ranches per year for the last 5 years. We're losing roughly 4 acres a minute nationwide of agricultural land.
You're kidding me.
It's unbelievable what's happening.
Where's that source?
Second?
Where did we fact check that?
Oh,
That's unbelievable.
No, it is. It's unbelievable what's happening.
You have more detail on that on BrentBN.com?
Yeah, we've got it there.
I'm going to look at that. I appreciate that information and that heads up.
Yeah, it really is. And what we're seeing is it's just being swallowed up by these globalist interests, right? Because ultimately the end state, if you control the food supply, you control the folks. Okay. And I tie water in with that, just like that, because Wyoming's one of the last states in the union to where adjudicated water rights go with the sale of the land. Now, there's a push even down there now, maybe subliminal, to separate those two. So it would be like Montana, right? So Ted Turner owns half of Montana. I use that, tongue-in-cheek there, but he owns a lot of Montana. He could sell all that land and keep all of his water rights.
Wyoming lost a monumental influence over its water with a court case between Nebraska and Wyoming years ago. In 2026, June 2026, the Colorado River Compact Agreement comes to expiration. There's currently not an agreement in place to follow that expiration. Do you have insights on that as a future potential governor of Wyoming that you might lend to the thoughts of our audience?
So this stemmed from way back at the kind of early last century, when Colorado diverted the Laramie River down to Colorado. Well, so Wyoming sued Colorado in the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says you can't do that. So one of those things that came out of it was the CRC, the Colorado River Compact in 1922. And so you have a series of upper basin states, which were an upper basin state, and then you have a series of lower basin states, California, Arizona, those kind of things. And so the amount of water is actually measured down near Lake Powell. So there's supposed to be roughly 17 million acre feet of water that actually get down there. So our percentage of that as an upper basin state is 14%. Okay, and we're talking about the Green River, as it comes down through Fontenelle and then goes down through Flaming Gorge. And as soon as it leaves Flaming Gorge and goes into Colorado, it turns into the Colorado River. And so you think about that, 14%. And my stance is there was no way I would ever go above that original agreement. Now, Bureau of Reclamation is coming out saying, you guys better agree or we're going to do it for you. And what I see is WOTUS, Waters of the U.S. under Barack Hussein Obama, was an attempt, and it's still out there, to have federal control over any navigable waterway. Well, what's a navigable waterway? I mean, is that a little creek? Or what is it? Now it comes down under the Biden 30-30. I mean, it could be standing water in some sort of depression. But it is an attempt to federalize all of our water. And my answer is absolutely unequivocally no. We're not doing that in Wyoming. And, I look at it to where, we are not responsible for California's mismanagement of water. We're just not. They have an endless supply of water directly to the west of them. But they need coal or they need gas to desalinate. And they don't want to do that. And that's their problem. So
As this Colorado River Compact comes to an expiration, Colorado and Wyoming are working closest I've ever witnessed them working together in mutual interest that really faces challenge from Texas, Arizona, Nevada, and California. That's surprising to some people.
Could be. I mean, Colorado is, I believe that's an upper basin state anyhow. And so there's some commonalities there.
But even when you have Colorado, who might be working closely allied with Wyoming now, Wyoming's future is really tomorrow. Starts today.
That's right.
And if you don't have water rights, you can have all the undeveloped property in the world, and what will its value be tomorrow?
That's right. That's right. And, we're seeing, of course, it's the climate's cyclical. And we're kind of going through kind of a drier spell now. And, we see that Nebraska's calling for more, so, of course, more comes out of the Platte. We see Idaho calling more. And, when spring gets here or late summer, we see Jackson Lake, almost dried up. You know what I mean? That's kind of what it's for, these reservoirs. Glendale, we see that too, right? But it is, there's a globalist initiative out there to make water a commodity, and not kind of more of a right, the people have right to water. And so it's something we really have to pay attention to in this state. Because, we may be small in population-wise, but I tell you what, we can wield a very powerful fist on this and say, absolutely no, we're not doing that.
Some say that if you want to be a millionaire in Wyoming, just dig below your feet.
That's right.
Well, imagine if Wyoming's ultimate solution to bringing people back to Wyoming, if keeping graduates of Wyoming in Wyoming, perhaps it's our water. And if we don't sustain the control of our water interests, what does our future hold in Wyoming?
Well, that's right. And I will tell you, that's why I'm opposed to hydrogen mining, right? So what goes on here is we'll get these kind of like the pronghorn H2 up there in Converse County. Is the objective there was to dig deep wells and then pull out that water down there. Well, I mean, Newton had it right. Gravity's 9.81 meters per second squared. I mean, and those upper aquifers are always going to, go down. We saw this in Gillette. We saw it in Kansas. We saw it in all these other places.
Rise and fall.
That's right. The thing is we get over 70% of our hydrogen from natural gas. We just pull it right off of that. And we've got more natural gas than just about anybody around. So why would we take it out of our water in a semi-arid state like Wyoming is? Why would we ever do that? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And it's being pushed by the coastal states, California, Washington, Oregon, because there are those green states, the ultra liberal, and they don't want it taken out of natural gas. They want it actually extracted from water. And it's like, you're going to get what we give you, period. That's the way I look at it. But we're not going to take it out of our water sources. We're not going to, not on my watch, we're not going to do it.
You're talking about energy in the state of Wyoming, beyond ag and what you talk about in terms of control of the populace, given our food supply.
Yeah.
What's happening with energy in terms of controlling Wyoming with respect to energy decisions internationally or across the country?
I think what we're starting to see is the culmination over decades now of false narratives that, quote, quote, fossil fuels are bad. Now, folks, these are not fossil fuels. They don't come from fossils. They're organic. I always call them organic. They're all regenerative, although it takes a while. We know that oil is the second most prevalent liquid on the planet. And it was the reason why Rockefeller, way back when, bought all the refineries and shut them all down so we could monopolize into Standard Oil. So they're just as much of our future as they are our past. And the technologies we have nowadays, I mean, we can get so much more out of a barrel of oil. We can get so much more out of a lump of coal. And the same thing with natural gas. And unfortunately, we're seeing all these false narratives come to play where those are all bad. Oh, they're destroying the environment when they're not at all. I mean, we see that if anybody looks at CO2 as carbon dioxide as a part of our atmosphere, I mean, it's 0.04% of a percent, 0.04% of our atmosphere is CO2. And then it's estimated, that man's influence on that globally is roughly about 11% of that. So, I mean, you're talking maybe just a fraction, that man has any influence on. And there's debate whether there's any influence at all, And
so who's driving the false narrative?
Well, the left, there's no question. And this is all promulgated by these oligarchs who want complete control. There's no question. They've gotten into our schools. I mean, we know that a vast majority of our school system, and particularly those who administer nationwide, have promulgated this in our schools and in our colleges. I mean, it's just like right now. You ask any college student, most of them, not all of them, what kind of government do we have? Oh, we have a democracy. I mean, it's just been ingrained so much. And I think we're seeing a lot of that, the culmination of a lot of those false narratives.
What happens to our republic if liberty is lost?
Then we lose everything. The only thing that truly matters, and I say thing, the only thing that truly matters is our liberty. Because, without it, we have nothing. We have absolutely nothing. And that's the beauty of being an American. And that's what, your viewers and your listeners out there, it's like, guys, we have to remember who we are. I mean, we are Americans. I mean, we are the greatest civilization in the world. And we just happen to be Wyoming Americans, right? Living in the greatest state and the greatest nation in the history of the world. But people have to remember who we are, because it was that indomitable spirit as Americans that where no challenge was too big. We were going to do it. And people have to remember that, that's who we are. And we have to start thinking that way again,
You talked about agriculture earlier. I've heard in preparation for today, you talk about the diminishing farm generationally.
Yeah.
Tell the audience about that, if you would.
Boy, I tell you, and it hits my heartstrings when I see this, because I mean that's what made when I was younger. I mean, a big ranch was who knows how many tens of thousands of acres. Now a big one is a lot smaller than that, and we've seen the consolidation of a lot of them. A lot of this taken out of production. CRP, the Conservation Reserve Program, which all started with good intentions back in the 80s under Reagan, because we were feeding the world 10 times over. Well, then it's like, okay, hey, let's not, let's put this land in reserve, but what we're seeing right now is that so much of it's been taken out and so much of it's been bought, because it kind of comes down to what's the root cause of why are these ranchers and farmers doing this? Why do their kids not want to assume their ranches? Why are these not going down to the second, the third, the fourth generation?
Property tax inflation could definitely be
there's no question that's
credited with part of that, couldn't it?
No, there's no question. There's no question. So if you look at
increasing property taxes escalate, and when frankly when an elderly leader of a family passes, the family decides whether or not they continue, and the upcoming tax bill around the corner tends to be one of the things where things start getting subdivided and farmland, ranch land become lost. Yeah,
and that's what we don't want. That's what we don't want. We got to ask ourselves, why is the suicide rate of growers surpassing that of veterans? Why is this happening? Nobody's looking at root cause. All they want to do is address symptoms out in our legislatures, like with taxes. Okay, we have all these
suicide rate marvels that of the military.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's starting to supersede that, and it's like, why is this happening? And again, I'm not a rancher, I'm not a farmer, but I do know what 100 to 120 hour work weeks are, because I've done it for weeks on end, and I understand that whole work ethic. And it's like, okay, what's really going on here? So if you look at the taxes, if you look at the overbearing regulations, if you look at the cost of fertilizers, if you look at the cost of equipment, if you look at the cost of fuel, because a bushel of corn really isn't much more than it was back in the mid-'70s. But, a ton of fertilizer, it was a fraction of the cost it was back then. A gallon of diesel way back then was, 60 cents maybe. Now it's $3.50 a gallon. And, a combine may have been $30,000 or $40,000 then. Now, shoot, it's over $1 million. So, I mean, these guys can't get ahead. And then we sit here and we look at crop insurance, and it's like, why would we even think as a nation we need crop insurance? And then there's certain crops in there that well, you have to grow these crops to get crop insurance. So it puts them in a corner. It's like, well, if they don't have crop insurance, then they can't get a loan, to buy a new piece of equipment. I mean, it's so counterintuitive.
As a candidate for Wyoming governor, you're talking about returning taxes to the taxpayer. You're talking about ending property tax. How are you going to fund our state needs as a government to operate in the interests you do reserve to be the responsibility of governor of Wyoming?
Minerals. There's no question. We need to expand that. And, and we got to cut the size of our government. We have to. But
if we do that, but if I can hear it now. If we do that, people aren't going to mine in Wyoming. They're not going to develop energy in Wyoming. Do you hear that? Can you hear that challenge?
Not if. Well, here's what I hear. In fact, I had a great conversation last night in Cheyenne, from a gal who was in the oil industry. And I said, no, I said, any permit that's out there right now, assuming that, it's gone through the correct vetting process and everything else to drill, I said, we're drilling. I said, none of this stuff is going to sit on my desk because I want this going. And, we've made such incredible leaps and bounds when it comes down to even drilling technology, fracking, those kind of things, and what we can get out of a barrel of oil. Coal in itself is a miracle fuel. You can get hydrogen out of it. It's just an incredible thing. You can get coal gas out of it to run vehicles. And the same thing with natural gas. There's so many things there. And then, of course, trona, potash, all those things. What we've got, and this is why it's a global issue for me, because interstate commerce, there's no coastal state should ever prevent us from selling our product to whomever we want, whether it's the Pacific Rim, whether it's India, whether it's these emerging nations like the BRICS, the Brazil, Russia, India, China, Saudi Arabia. And there's more in there. But we're really seeing a lot in India right now because they're exploding. They're trying to go from a third world nation to a second world nation, which roughly equates to having 1 meal a day to 2 meals a day. Well, with all the doggone trona we've got and all the soda ash we've got for glass, that's a huge market, going through Galveston, or how will we get it over there? And the same thing in the Pacific Rim. As the Pacific Rim nations, the Asian nations better develop. And yeah, we've got those faux potash thing or faux soda ash things out there, but it's nothing like the real soda ash that we produce here, which is needed for glass. So it is one of those things that we look for those markets, and we really pursue any state that prevents us from selling our products to those emerging markets. And but we're conducive. We should be more than willing to let these guys come in and drill as they need to, or mine, whatever the deal is. And the one thing we're seeing with the wind is, where are the environmental impact studies on these things on state land? We can't find them anywhere. So
I would look to the state land board, led by the governor in the state of Wyoming.
That's
for
right.
those answers. Is that your call as well?
Well, you would think. You would think. Of course, the DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality, has a big play in this too. So the way this kind of works is that the governor appoints an ISC, Industrial Siting Council. It's a 6-member board. One of them has to be an opposing party. And so far, that Industrial Siting Council has pretty much rubber stamped every wind project or solar project that's come to the state. So, and all of these, particularly if they're going on state land, all require a public comment period. Well, I'm sure folks, your viewers out there are familiar with Radiant Energy, what happened up in Bar 9, which was an outfit that produced modular nuclear reactors. Okay, it's not a novel concept by any means, but it was one of those things that required public comment. So when the people heard about it, they didn't like it at all. But I will tell you what happened here is, whether it's the Sweetwater BLM RMP, the resource management plan over there, whether it's the sage grouse issue, whether it's the Fremont or Park County, or all these new land use plans that are very encumbering upon the folks, whether it's Pronghorn H2 or what's going on in Chugwater as they're trying to shut these windmills down, or this big push to put more windmills down, is that any of these projects that require public comment, the skids are already greased, the deals have been made, the legislation has been done. It appears to be this way anyway, before the people are actually brought into the equation for public comment. So people are really quickly figuring out that their comment doesn't matter. And I think bar none just happens to be the confluence of all these issues that went together, because they're seeing this all over the state, right? They're seeing it, and people got PO'd. And they said, no, we don't want it here. Now, obviously, nuclear, we already have it here in Kemmerer, right, with the Natrium plant over there, the Bill Gates Natrium plant, right? It's already here. But it ultimately, this comes down to the consent of the governed, and that's what the slip's missing. Consent of the governed. If the people say no, then the people say no, period. We listen to them. And, I look at the slip and I see what's gone on and how this state's been sold out to the highest bidders. And it's really been by politicians who lack the moral courage to defend our constitutional liberties and prevent our state from corporate takeover, because we are really evolving into a corporate state here. And my answer is absolutely no. So what I want to see with these slip decisions, for future slip decisions, is those get confirmed by the legislature. At least it brings the people back in to the equation. And it's like, okay, what's gone on is completely unsatisfactory to me. I don't like it at all. People come to Wyoming to get away from windmills. We know that these windmills never generate the energy to ever cover the cost of their production, their actual construction and everything else. We know that. We know what they do to the wildlife, particularly the birds. We know how much fiberglass they shed roughly annually, which is about 137 pounds per windmill annually. We know that there's another 4,000 that are on their way to Wyoming. And just because of the wind wall, if anybody's familiar with the wind wall, and it goes all the way out to Wamsutter and everything else, there's a whole bunch of these things coming. All right. And again, the thing really comes down to what's going on state land. And my answer is no. It's no. It's like we need to put back baseload power needs to be shifted back to coal and to gas. That's what needs to happen right there. Because of what's going on with this fluctuation in our boilers in there, anybody who knows anything about metallurgy knows that really reduces the life of our boilers, and it puts a lot of pressure on our power plants that are out there, because what they're doing is they're having to compensate for the lags in solar and wind. I mean,
Is solar the future of Wyoming?
No.
Is wind
No.
the future of
Absolutely
Wyoming?
not. No.
Is hydrogen power
Yeah, I think hydrogen is
potential
very much in the future.
for the future of
You bet.
Wyoming?
And we've got a whole bunch of it here because we got so much natural gas.
One audience member writes that they recall for most of their lifetime refineries burning off gas
Yeah.
at each location of refineries throughout Wyoming.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting if capture of that resource wasn't burnt into the atmosphere, but actually captured, and it could be a revenue driver for the state of Wyoming.
It could. It very well could. And I think, this is what we have to do with UW engineering and some of these things over there, is let's look for those technologies, to do this, because things are so much different. I mean, technology expands so much just in the course of a year, but over the course of a generation, roughly 20 years. I mean, it's amazing what we can do now. And, so much of we're exporting 80% of our energy in this state, and it's kind of a shame to see that. And a lot of it, we're not collecting any taxes on or anything like that. So it's like, okay, what's really going on here? And, but yeah, I think, and look at our refineries.
Would you suggest an increase in severance tax, or would you derive revenue from the industries that you've mentioned in other ways?
Well, it comes down to a couple of things, because we know that these industries, any raise in tax that they may receive, all gets passed off to the consumer. Right. I mean, these guys are in for a profit margin, obviously, and that's what free market capitalism is about. But we got to make sure that does not adversely affect the taxpayer.
Most of these resources are not end user necessarily for Wyoming. They're end used by California or larger states across the country.
That's right. And with the carbon capture that we're doing right now, we know that if it was profitable by the energy companies, that the taxpayer wouldn't be footing the bill on this stuff. Well, we're footing the bill on all this carbon capture stuff, so we know they know it's not profitable. So this is why the Corporations Committee, I think is the one, I can't remember, they voted a few months ago that the House said, no, get rid of it. We're not going to do it anymore. But the Senate side of it, because it's a joint committee, said, no, let's keep it on there. Well, it has to be one of those things where both sides agree to get rid of it.
In Albany County, I recall in the last 12 months, there seemed to be a a sigh of relief in that the monies derived from wind development in our Albany County were somehow saving the county in terms of government operations, and therefore the citizens of Albany County, that it was generating tax monies that was going to provide a future for our county. But that's a short vision, in that you get that one time. You don't get that ongoing development monies, correct?
That's correct. And I think what we'll see
No
here,
severance, no severance tax
that's
for
right.
the siting that blocks your view of the mountains or extracts the tourism industry from Wyoming.
That's right.
Right from under its feet.
That's right. The view sheds we have in Wyoming are unmatched anywhere in the world. I truly believe that, and I've been around so much of the world. And obviously there's some bias there, but it is an absolutely beautiful state. I mean, it's just, and I'm so glad we don't live in Nebraska for as much as I run around the state. But it's the Inflation Reduction Act, all that funding is going to end in October. Right? So I think this is one reason why we're seeing all these green energy companies wanting to throw everything at the wall to see what sticks, right? Because once that's gone, it's gone. A lot of these subsidies, because it's all taxpayer money. Everybody says, well, it's, some people may say it's federal money, it's grant money, whatever it is, but it's all taxpayer money ultimately. It just depends upon which pot it is derived. But there's an argument out there. Well, it's private property. Okay, I got it. Has it been rezoned as industrial? What's really going on here with tax collection? How come the state's not getting anything from this?
What's my neighbor's influence on my property?
Yeah, and that's the thing with wind, in particular with wind. There is some issues there with solar too. With these huge fields, and we know that the ground underneath the solar panels is done. When that stuff's removed off there, it's going to take generations to actually get that land going again. But here's what I'll tell folks is that I routinely ask people, who's mortgage free? A series of hands will come up on their property, right? Don't know anything. Okay. Well, who in here has title to their land? Pretty much the same hands come up. And I hate to rain on their parade, but nobody in the state of Wyoming truly owns their land. The assessor does. So it's like the most that the folks have is a warranty deed. And I always say, if you don't believe me, just don't pay your taxes for a couple of years. The doggone assessor will sell